Could you move into our basement, Dad? It's safer for you there. My son spoke calmly while my daughter-in-law set a mini apartment layout right next to my wife's memorial photo, still scented with funeral flowers. I stood still, thinking I'd misheard. This house, the one my wife and I laid brick by brick, was now too much for an old man, they said. My daughter-in-law smiled lightly. Don't be stubborn, Dad. At your age, people should have a guardian. The words landed cold as a sentence. I didn't argue. I just nodded and rested my hand on the phone that was recording. That night, I opened her oak cabinet and found a blue file stamped "Second house only for when you need to disappear." I looked at the international number at the bottom and called. A woman's voice came on, warm but firm. "Calvin Brooks, you finally called." She said when you called, the game would begin. And believe me, before long, the very children who think they're protecting me will pay for their greed in a way they won't see coming. If you're still here, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Every comment helps this story reach more hearts, and if it moved you, give it a like so others can find it too. My name is Calvin Brooks, 74 years old, a retired postal supervisor in the state of Georgia. I worked 43 years for the government and was never late a day. People call me old-fashioned, the kind of man who believes in honor, keeping his word, and the value of a firm handshake. I lost my wife, Loretta, after 51 years of marriage. She was the only person who could make me go quiet in an argument because, when she spoke, reasoning felt unnecessary. We weren't rich, but we built this house with savings and the belief that family is the safest place on earth. I used to believe that, until the very children I raised with these calloused hands began talking to me like a stranger, an old man who should be under guardianship instead of respected. 2 weeks after my wife's funeral, Loretta, the house still smelled of lilies. Sympathy cards lay on the dining table, not yet put away. I thought Marcus and Alyssa were coming to light a candle for their mother, or at least have dinner and talk about the days ahead. But when they opened a laptop, spread out papers, and said, "Dad, we need a serious talk," I knew nothing was the same. Alyssa presented like she was in a conference room. She pulled up slides on elder living expenses, almost laughable to hear. She said I'd be more comfortable if I sold this house and moved into a safe living area in their basement with a private room, TV, and a separate entrance so you'll have your own space. Marcus sat beside her, nodding as if it were the only reasonable option. I looked around the kitchen where Loretta baked apple pies every Sunday morning, then at our wedding photo by the window. They didn't see the memories living in every corner. They only saw property value. "We only want what's best for you, Dad," Alyssa said, practical to the bone. "This place is too big. You don't need all this. If we sell, we can spread the money into investments for the future, yours and the grandkids." I raised an eyebrow. Whose future? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Alyssa paused a beat, then forced a smile. "Everyone's, of course." Right then, my daughter, Nadine, walked in. She wore her nurse's scrubs, face drained from a night shift. "Dad, I think we should consider it. If you're near us, you'll have care. We can't let you be alone forever." I looked at the 3 people in front of me, my own flesh and blood, and realized I wasn't the father anymore. I was an account to be efficiently managed. I took a sip of water and kept my voice even. "You've thought this through. Give me time to think. After all, this is my house and your mother's." Marcus started to add something, but Alyssa touched his arm to stop him. They closed the laptop and stood. Before leaving, she said, "Don't worry, Dad. We just want to help you do the right thing. Maybe it's time for a legal guardian, just to keep your finances safe." Her tone was gentle, but underneath it was a cold blade. I nodded in silence, walked them to the door, and closed it softly. The house was so quiet I could hear the clock tick, like it was counting down my time and my freedom. When night fell, I stepped into Loretta's study. The scent of oak and her old perfume still lingered, as if she'd just left yesterday. Papers, notebooks, and the wooden box she told me, "Don't open unless you must," sat on the desk. I never understood what she meant until today. I opened the bottom drawer. A blue file, tied with a silver ribbon, lay inside. Loretta's handwriting, shaky but clear, read, "Second house only for when you need to disappear." I opened it. Inside were documents I'd never seen, foreign bank accounts, a certificate of ownership for a seaside villa in the Algarve, Portugal, under a sole name of Loretta Brooks. Tucked in was a business card, Inés Rocha, attorney, Lisbon. At the very bottom, a handwritten letter. "Calvin, if I'm right, by the time you read this, they've started plotting. The house in America is debt-free, but don't let them turn it into a battleground. The Algarve villa is yours. Use it when you need quiet or when you need to disappear. You'll know when it's time." I read those lines over and over, feeling something inside me, not grief exactly, but a clarity mixed with anger that had been held down too long. I locked the door, photographed every document, and uploaded them to the cloud. Everything went into a private account only I knew. Then I sat in Loretta's old chair and looked out the window where she used to grow lavender. Turns out, Loretta knew. She knew that one day our children, out of fear, ambition, or the era's practicality, would treat their parents as a burden, a resource to be optimized. And as always, she'd moved one step ahead. I sighed, poured myself a small whiskey. It burned my throat and brought tears to my eyes, but my chest grew warm. I looked at my phone, the international number in Loretta's slanted hand, and dialed. After 3 rings, a woman's voice, low, warm, and firm. "Calvin Brooks, you finally called." She said when you called, the game would begin. I squinted at our wedding photo and smiled. "Then," I said, "it's time I learned to play by her rules." Outside, the wind tapped the window pane. I didn't know what the future would be, only this. From that moment on, the family meeting Marcus and Alyssa started had officially become my chessboard. And they had no idea that the man they planned to edge out was the one holding the final move. I still remember the sound of that call, the woman's voice clear, full, with a hint of Portuguese cadence. "Calvin Brooks, you finally called." She said when you called, the game would begin. I sat still, gripping the phone, my thumb shaking. The way she said it made my heart tighten. There was only one person we both could mean. Loretta. "Who are you?" I asked. "I'm Inés Rocha. Mrs. Loretta helped my family years ago. I'm guessing you're calling about the house in the Algarve." I almost stopped breathing. "Yes, that villa really exists?" She laughed softly, like sea wind. "Of course. And I've been looking after it, just as she asked." I leaned back and looked at the ceiling. Everything seemed to tilt the image of Loretta in a white floral dress in the summer sun, always holding a notebook, writing without pause. Now I understood. Those retreats she mentioned weren't just vacations. "Loretta saved my family from deportation," Inés went on. "My husband lost his job, and our residency was about to be denied. She quietly paid all our legal fees without putting her name on anything. Without her, my son wouldn't have stayed and gone to college." It felt like someone squeezed my chest. Loretta never told me that. In more than 50 years together, she did so many quiet things, and I, the husband who thought he knew her best, only knew half the story. "And what did she tell you? About me?" My voice had gone hoarse. Inés paused a moment, then spoke slowly. "She called you loyal, but vulnerable because of your kindness. She said, Calvin will always choose feeling over logic. That's his strength, but also where people can take advantage." I let out a bitter little laugh. "Yes, that sounds like her." She told me Loretta had traveled alone to the Algarve 2 years ago. She visited the villa, renewed the maintenance contracts, and gave Inés the keys. She said that someday a silver-haired man might call me and I must keep the house ready. What do you mean by ready? I asked. Ready for you to live there immediately. The legal files in Lisbon are prepared. With your signature, the house is yours to use. Mrs. Loretta kept up the property taxes and maintenance. I still tend the lemon trees and dust every week. I couldn't hold back a tear. I pictured Loretta on the chaise, writing in the late-day sun. She knew it could come to this and still set a place for me beyond the storm. Do you know why she hid this from me? Why she didn't tell me? Inez answered gently but firmly. She said if she told you, you'd refuse. She didn't want you torn or guilty. She wanted you safe legally and emotionally when it was time to go. I pressed a hand to my forehead and sat in long silence. The room felt still. In the frame on the desk, our wedding photo caught the light, so her eyes seemed to be watching me. She called your children a pack of wolves who haven't learned to hunt without biting kin, Inez added. She didn't hate them, but she knew they would test you. I closed my eyes and heard my quote, heartbeat. She wasn't wrong. I had sheltered them too much, thinking that was love, not realizing I was feeding their greed. She told me to pass this on if you called. Don't fear leaving. Some things can only be kept intact when you step away from them. I breathed in. The message felt like both a will and a comfort from the one who knew me best. Calvin, she said softly, you can come any time. The house is ready. The lemon grove is in season, and the sea is as warm as the last time she saw it. I smiled, my lips trembling. You've been caring for the house all this time? Yes. She paid regularly through a private fund. I just did my part, kept everything as it was so you wouldn't feel like a stranger when you arrive. We spoke for nearly an hour. Inez described the white villa with the red tile roof and blue shutters opening toward the ocean. Loretta had asked her to plant a row of lavender by the porch because he loves that smell, especially before it rains. I sat there, heart sinking and lifting all at once. Loretta remembered the little things I thought she'd forgotten. At the end, Inez said, if you need, I'll email scans of everything. It's all legal. Only one step remains: your signature to acknowledge use. Then I can arrange entry support for you. She told me to help you leave with dignity, not in flight. Leave with dignity, I repeated, and a strange calm rose in me. Not running, but going somewhere else to begin again, with memory and dignity intact. After the call, I sat a long time in the study. The blue file lay open, its pages catching the lamplight. I traced the words Algarve personal ownership, feeling like I was holding Loretta's hand across time. She had always been one step ahead, not because she distrusted people, but because she understood them. She used to say, kindness doesn't need repayment, but it does need boundaries so it doesn't get torn apart. Now I understood. What Loretta left wasn't just assets, it was a survival plan, a quiet exit for a husband who always trusted blood too much. I opened the window, and night air brought in the scent of jasmine. In that moment, I felt her presence more clearly than ever. I knew what I had to do next. Before I left America, I had to lock every door behind me so no one could take my freedom in the name of care. I opened my notebook and wrote one line. Tomorrow morning call attorney Ethan Cole. I turned off the light, leaving only the warm glow of the bedside lamp on her photo. Before I closed the door, I spoke softly, as if Loretta still sat there, listening in silence. I'll go, Loretta, but not to run. To keep what you protected with your whole life. The next morning, I drove to the attorney's office. Loretta had listed Ethan Cole, downtown Savannah. I remembered her mentioning his name once at dinner last year, saying she was streamlining the estate plan. I just laughed, thinking she was being overly careful. Now I knew. She wasn't doing it for herself. The office was on a cobblestone street shaded by old oaks. I sat in the car a minute, straightened my tie, and went in. The young receptionist smiled and led me to a small conference room. The door opened, and Ethan walked in. He was younger than I expected, mid-30s, tall and lean, neat haircut, bright face, observant eyes. His handshake was firm and calm. "Good to meet you, Mr. Brooks. I'm Ethan Cole. I've heard a lot about you." "From Mrs. Loretta," he said warmly. Hearing my wife's name tightened my throat. "She came to see you." "Not just once. She was a long-time client. We worked together nearly 3 years on her estate plan." He sat me down and opened a thick file, each section flagged with yellow tabs. "First, to put you at ease," Ethan said, professional but gentle. "Your current house is entirely in your name via quitclaim deed. A copy is here. Mrs. Loretta finalized it 8 months before she passed. The property is completely debt-free, no mortgage." I looked at the page and saw my name under sole owner. Relief and sorrow came together. Loretta had given me a shield. "That means," Ethan continued, "any action to sell, lease, or reappraise without your signature is unlawful, even if it's your own children." I nodded slowly. "What if they've already contacted brokers or a bank?" "We'll send formal warnings. Cease and desist. I'll draft them. They'll demand all parties stop any activity tied to the property at this address." He adjusted his glasses and wrote notes. "That's step 1. I stayed quiet. The word "we" felt like comfort. "And step 2? "Step 2 is, I'll have the county recorder add a formal note to the title. Any transaction or listing without Mr. Calvin Brooks's verified original signature will be considered fraudulent and void. That blocks anyone from impersonating you or acting in your name without legal authority." I tilted my head. "Impersonating? You think they might try?" Ethan didn't answer right away. He poured water and spoke evenly. "I don't want to alarm you, but I've seen it often, especially with elders living alone. Adult children may think they're helping by taking control. They justify it with family ties, but the law doesn't weigh feelings." I breathed in. "I know. They brought up legal guardianship yesterday." His expression shifted. He leaned back, fingers interlaced. "I figured. They're testing a conservatorship claiming diminished capacity to control finances. They'd file in civil court arguing you need oversight. And if they win, you'd lose signing authority and decision-making over your assets. Everything from your pension to this house lands in a guardian's hands." Heat rose to my face. "Terrifying that someone can strip a father's freedom with a few forms." "I know," Ethan said, understanding, "and frankly, there's a bias baked in. People assume elderly black folks need their modern kids to manage money, like they're not lucid. I've seen it too many times. We won't let that happen to you." I nodded my thanks. Something in his voice made me trust him, not just skill, but a feel for what's unfair. "Here's what we'll do," he said, sliding papers over. "We'll build a capacity and autonomy file for you, mental health clearance, cognitive evaluations, plus your credit and financial history. It will show you are fully capable of managing your affairs." He met my eyes. "We need this before they file. If we move first, they can't touch a dime." For the first time in days, I felt steady. "Ethan," I said, "I don't want to sue my kids, but I won't be treated like I've lost my mind." He smiled softly. "We don't need to sue anyone, Mr. Brooks. We just prepare. The law is a shield, not a sword." I liked how he said it, calm, not bitter but strong as steel. Ethan coached me on protecting myself. He said to record calls with Marcus or Alyssa legally. Georgia allows one-party consent. "Recordings will be evidence if they try to twist your words," he explained. He also suggested I restructure accounts so no one can reach the originals. Keep most savings in a private account and open a small daily use account. If they insist on checking, let them see the small one. That's enough. I took notes carefully. I'd worked with logs and forms my whole life, so when he said, "paper is power," I got it. I used to tell new postal clerks, if it's not in black and white, It doesn't exist. Now I was relearning that lesson for myself. As we wrapped up, Ethan asked, "Could you share details to include in the capacity file? I need objective proof." I handed him work records, 43 years in, the Postal Service with no discipline, my latest clinic health check, a clean credit report. I still drive myself, pay every bill, and I've never filed taxes late. He scanned and nodded. "Excellent. With this, any guardianship petition gets tossed. We'll finalize your affidavit this week. You'll have the strongest shield I can build." He stood and offered his hand. "From now on, you don't have to confront them directly. Root contact through me." I gripped his hand, blood warming not from anger, but from taking the wheel back. For weeks I'd felt dragged out of my own life. Now I was steering again. On the way out, I pulled over by the river. A light breeze riffled the water. I thought of Loretta, the woman who'd set everything in place, both the shield and the exit route. I looked at Ethan's card, Cole and Associates Estate and Elder Law, and slid it into my wallet. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't afraid. I just thought, if Loretta's watching, she's smiling. The man she once feared would be taken advantage of has finally learned to protect himself. 2 days after meeting Ethan Cole, I got a text from Marcus. "Dad, we need to talk. The family wants to meet with clarity and kindness." I didn't reply. I just reread the word family, a canopy they now use to hide their greed. By Saturday morning, another call came, this time from Alyssa. "Dad, we'll stop by around 2 o'clock. I'm bringing our legal representative so everything is more professional." More professional. I actually laughed out loud, a dry, hollow laugh. In Alyssa's mouth, that word has never meant kind. At exactly 2 o'clock, I heard wheels crunching over gravel outside the window. I stood in the kitchen, the coffee kettle still steaming. Marcus walked in first, same confident stride, broad shoulders, gray suit, matching tie. Alyssa followed, hair in a high bun, a cream-colored coat, her perfume strong and cold as steel. Last came a man I didn't know, about 40, black overcoat, briefcase in hand, clearly their private attorney. "Hi, Dad," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice gentle. "I know this is a sensitive topic, but we just want to help you get settled. Mom's not been gone long, and you're emotional." Alyssa sat across from me and set a file case on the wooden table. "Dad," she said with practiced sympathy, "we've talked it through. This house is really too big for you alone. You should be near family, near your granddaughter. We can convert our basement into a private space, bedroom, bathroom, even a small kitchen. I've already drafted a sample layout." She pulled out the papers and slid a pastel drawing toward me, a bare room with no windows, a single bed, and a small dining table. "You'll have complete privacy," Alyssa smiled, "and we can help manage your finances, taxes, so you won't have to worry. It'll save on taxes and avoid asset risks." "Risks?" I asked. Marcus cut in, firm. "Dad, statistics show most older men after losing a wife are easily scammed and exploited. They lose judgment because emotions overtake reason. I don't want that for you." I looked straight into my son's eyes. "Did you just say lose judgment?" Marcus hesitated, then nodded. "I only mean you need someone to help manage things," Alyssa added. "We don't want anything more than that, Dad. We're only thinking of your safety. And Talia's heading to college. If we sell the house, the extra money eases your burden and helps her future." Her voice was sweet as sugar, but her eyes were all calculation. I set my coffee cup down, took a slow breath, and said evenly, "Sounds reasonable. You two really prepared." Marcus exhaled, assuming I'd given in. But right then, I took my phone from my pocket, set it on the table, the screen lit with a blinking red dot. The air shifted instantly. All three froze. I kept my voice level. "Before this family discussion goes any further, let me be clear under Georgia law. Recording a conversation is legal if one party consents. I consent. We're talking about my property, so every word will be kept so no one can misunderstand later. For the first time in years, I felt like I had taken back the reins of my life. I don't know if you've ever had to record or save evidence in your own family, but if you've been in something like this, tell me in the comments. Sometimes sharing helps someone else find the courage they don't yet have. Their attorney, the man in the black coat, cleared his throat and avoided my eyes. Marcus flushed, and Alyssa tightened her grip on the handle of her case, lips pressed thin. "Dad, it doesn't have to be this tense," Marcus said, pushing for a softer tone. "We just want a respectful conversation." "Respectful," I repeated. "Then why bring a lawyer?" "No one answered. The kitchen clock ticked loud enough to sting. I looked at each of them and said, slowly, "You say you want to help manage my assets. Help me live better. What you really want is control. My money, my house, my freedom. Let's not dance around it." Alyssa forced a smile. "You're misunderstanding. This is practical. I'm thinking of the long-term good of the whole family." "Long-term for whom?" I asked. "For me, or for people waiting on an inheritance?" The air went heavy. Marcus clenched his jaw. "Dad, if you insist on being stubborn, we'll have to consider legal guardianship. We have the right to do that if you show you're not fully sound." The moment he finished, I leaned forward, voice low and steady. "You just threatened your father in front of an attorney while being legally recorded. Are you aware of that?" Their lawyer tugged Marcus's sleeve, signaling him to stop. I went on. "I've retained my own attorney, the same, one who advised your mother. Property files, legal papers, and this entire exchange will be stored in a secure cloud. I'm not selling, not moving, not granting financial power of attorney. If you want to try for guardianship, go ahead. But remember, every word today will be presented in court if necessary." A heavy silence fell. Only the wind at the window and the soft clicking of the coffee maker. Their lawyer stood first. "I think I shouldn't be here," he said quietly, a slight tremor in his voice. "I can't represent a matter that involves conflicts of interest and threatens an elder client's autonomy." "I'll excuse myself," Marcus glared. "We hired you to—" "Yes, but I can't proceed if it violates ethics," he said, quickly gathering his papers and walking out, leaving the air primed to explode. Alyssa stood, trying to look composed but clearly rattled. "You're misunderstanding us. You think we want to hurt you?" I held her gaze. "No, I think you're hurting yourselves. When a family puts assets over love, what's lost isn't just a house." Marcus had no words. His hands clenched, his voice wavered. "You don't have to turn this into a battlefield." "No one made it a battlefield, Marcus," I said softly. "I'm simply reclaiming my ground." I stood and moved toward the door. "This meeting is over. From now on, all my legal matters go through my attorney. If you have anything to say, let my legal representative review it." Alyssa glanced around the kitchen like searching for something to hold on to. She spoke barely above a whisper. "You're doing this out of anger because you lost Mom, so you—" I cut in, firm. "No. I'm doing this because your mother taught me to stop the moment people start mistaking kindness for weakness." Marcus looked at me, eyes mixed with regret and resentment, but said nothing more. They left in silence. I closed the door behind them and listened to the sound of their tires pulling away. The house held only the smell of cooling coffee and the wind scraping the porch. I leaned my forehead against the door, feeling empty but lighter. On the table, my phone was still lit. I stopped the recording, uploaded it to the cloud at once, and labeled the file. Mediation evidence, no one. Outside, the sunset burned deep red. I looked out toward the garden where Loretta used to tend jasmine and thought, "You see that, Loretta? I'm not being led anymore. They want to see me weak, but this is the strongest I've ever been." I poured another cup of fresh coffee and let the aroma drift through the room. The fight had begun, but this time I didn't need to raise my voice. I only had to wait because people who believe they control everything always destroy themselves first. At 7 o'clock the next morning, I woke earlier than usual. March air was cold, a mist still soft over the porch. Fresh coffee filled the quiet kitchen. I looked. Around the house, strangely tidy. Now tidy, because I'd cleared out what no longer belonged to me, and no longer belonged to them. When the first moving truck stopped at 7:30 a.m., I knew my plan was underway. 4 men in blue uniforms stepped out, greeted me politely, and began carrying labeled cartons to the truck. I'd labeled them the night before, not in haste, but by design. Each box bore a bold label: Personal property of Marcus, Alyssa Brooks, returned to owner. Below, a smaller line, clear and precise the way Loretta wrote in her ledgers: Inventory completed, packed and transported safely. Recipient's signature required at delivery address. I added nothing else. No sarcasm, no note, just absolute courtesy. The boxes were sealed neatly, numbered, with the carrier's sign-off. All of it was the stuff Marcus and Alyssa had left here for years: the high school football trophies, the leather jacket Marcus bragged cost as much as Dad's old car, Alyssa's wedding dress that hung in the guest closet, a few boxes of Talia's old toys, photos from Mexico, even gifts I'd given them that they abandoned. One mover asked, "Would you like us to mark fragile on any of these?" I smiled. "No need. The most fragile thing isn't in those boxes." He chuckled and didn't ask further. Around 8, neighbors began twitching curtains. Mrs. Carter across the street stood on her porch with a coffee mug, eyes curious. A couple of late school kids pointed and whispered. In this neighborhood, anything odd fuels a week of talk. I stood by the window, clipboard in hand, signing each bill of lading. Every box logged with time, photographed, saved. It was a clean audit. When the truck doors shut and the engine rumbled, I knew Marcus and Alyssa were about to get a morning delivery. The past returned. I don't like noise, but sometimes well-organized silence is louder than shouting. Less than an hour later, my phone rang. Marcus's name flashed. I answered calmly. "Hello, son. What are you doing?" He ground out. "The neighbors are crowding our front yard. A truck just delivered boxes labeled Return of Personal Property. Are you trying to humiliate us?" I took a sip of coffee. "Humiliate? I'm returning what you left behind. It's your personal property, right? I don't keep what isn't mine. Do you know how this looks? People are filming. The whole block thinks we were kicked out. I can't control what people think, but at least I'm within the law, returning to the owner what's theirs. If you feel ashamed, maybe it isn't because of my actions." Silence for a few beats. Then, hard. "What game are you playing? Pressure? Provocation?" I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "No. I'm restoring order. You want control over my assets while your things still occupy space in your mother's house. Returning them is the right thing. Perfectly reasonable, isn't it?" I heard Alyssa cut in on the other end, voice high. "This is a public insult. Neighbors are filming, it'll be online. I work with clients here." "Good," I said. "Still even. The more people see clearly, the easier it is to understand who's doing what." "You'll regret," I cut her off. "I'm too old for regret, dear. I do what's right. If what's right feels like a threat to you, that's not my problem." A long pause. Then the click of a hang-up. I set the phone down and exhaled slowly. I wasn't angry, just steady in a way I hadn't felt since Loretta passed. By noon, the first neighborhood post went up. I watched a clip of the truck dropping Marcus's boxes at his house, captioned, "Old Man Brooks returns his son's stuff professional to the bone." Dozens of comments followed. "He's right. Don't let anyone think you need them to exist." "Brilliant. A government man's counter, short, legal, effective. I want to learn how to return the past like this. I didn't comment, just saved everything, each frame a piece of social proof. When they create the noise themselves, I don't have to say a word. Silence lets people decide who's right. I logged 7:30 a.m., the carrier's name, and 2 neighbor witnesses. All filed with the legal record. Ethan had told me, defensive moves need evidence. Do it by the book, and let them walk into your net. The perfectly reasonable tactic, Ethan's term, left Marcus and Alyssa with no way to object without indicting themselves. Only the guilty feel insulted when others follow the rules. By late afternoon, I was back at the desk. Loretta's blue file still lay there, soft as the far sea. I opened the last section where she'd written a short note. If you've read this far, use this conservation fund to correct what you once believed. Not all blood shares the same heart. Below were documents for a local conservation trust, where Loretta had donated yearly to protect the old oaks around our area. I read carefully and understood her point. That was the true legacy, the part that can't be bought or split. I opened the computer and logged in with the credentials Inez sent. There was a significant transfer from Lisbon to the U.S., labeled simply Foundation Continuation Fund, Loretta Brooks. I sat a long time, feeling like Loretta was beside me. She always worked quietly but never without vision. I printed everything, slid the pages into a leather folder, and placed them in the briefcase she used back when she worked at the bank. Before closing it, I added a handwritten note. Marcus, Alyssa, tomorrow, 4 o'clock in the afternoon at the house. I want to talk about the real legacy your mother left. I sealed the envelope with their names and had it delivered by hand. That evening, I sat on the sofa as warm light fell across our wedding photo. Outside, wind moved through the jasmine, the scent like a reminder I was on the right path. I was no longer the silent, long-suffering father. I was the man teaching his children the last lesson that ownership isn't license and family can't stand on greed. Tomorrow at 4, they would come, and I would show them what legacy really is: not money, not land, but the self-respect Loretta left me, to pass on if they were brave enough to receive it. Right at 4 o'clock the next day, their car sounded at the gate. I was ready. The kitchen was brighter than usual. I'd opened every curtain, letting the sun spill across the wooden table where I'd laid everything out. The blue file, sealed envelopes, and a small placard with Loretta's handwriting. If one day you must stand between right and love, choose right. True love will return. Marcus entered, wary. Alyssa trailed him, arms folded, face tight. Why did you call us here? She asked, voice low, but sharp. I motioned for them to sit. To talk about your mother's true legacy. Legacy? Marcus frowned. You mean her savings, or that villa we heard rumors about? I didn't answer yet. I pulled out a chair, sat across from them, and opened the folder. Each page was clipped, stamped, and signed by the law office. These are the legal documents your mother filed 6 months before she passed, I said slowly. They concern this house and most of what remained. Alyssa leaned forward. You mean a will? Better than a will. I slid the pages toward them. A conservation trust permanent. Marcus skimmed, then looked up, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. I don't get it. Why would she create a conservation trust? We don't plan to develop the land, we just— No, son. I cut in, calm and firm. It's because of that just. She knew you might someday carve it up, sell it, or turn it into something else. This trust ends those possibilities. I opened to the first page and read, clearly, the property at 1428 West Pine Street, Savannah, Georgia, is hereby placed into a conservation trust for perpetual preservation, to serve as a family memorial home and small community biotope. All sales, mortgages, transfers, or commercial development are strictly prohibited. Any violation will be prosecuted under state law. I paused and looked at them. Marcus was stunned, Alyssa frowning, lips tight. "So," I said, "this house, the one you plan to put me in the basement of and sell, no longer belongs to an individual. It belongs to a conservation trust under court supervision." Alyssa drew in a hard breath. "Who manages the trust? Whose name is on it?" I turned the page and pointed to the clearly printed line. "Beneficiary and duly designated successor trustee, Talia Brooks, effective upon reaching 25 years of age." Marcus blurted. "My daughter?" I nodded. "Yes, my granddaughter, and the only one your mother trusted to keep this place without turning it into merchandise." Alyssa scoffed, voice fraying. "A girl barely past 20? What does she know about assets, about the law?" I met her eyes. "More than you think." I spoke slowly, each word clear. "The summer Talia was 17, she stayed here 3 months. Your mother's joints hurt, she couldn't move around much. Every morning at 6, Talia got up to water the garden, pull weeds and pick pests off the lemon trees Loretta planted. She never complained, never asked. 'What do I get if I help?' she asked. 'What can I do?' That question was enough for your mother to know that when the time came, Talia would be the only one who understood what this place meant." Marcus shook his head with a bitter little laugh. "So we're cut out, right?" "No," I said evenly, tilting my head. "You're not cut out. You have a lesson." Alyssa's hands clenched. She hissed through her teeth. She always played favorites. She never acknowledged Marcus's sacrifices. "Enough," I cut in, looking straight at her. "Real sacrifice doesn't need to be screamed to be recognized. If you have to demand it, you're buying, not giving." I opened to the next section and pointed at Beneficiary Protection Clause. "Any individual or organization that harasses, coerces, manipulates, or pressures the beneficiary to seize, transfer, or alter the trust terms shall be permanently barred, prohibited from entering the conservation property and from deriving any benefit from the trust's assets." I read it out, firm and complete, not skipping a word. The kitchen fell so quiet I could hear the wall clock. "Are you planning to use this to threaten us?" Marcus asked, his voice shaking with anger. "I'm not threatening anyone," I said. "I'm carrying out my wife's wishes, and this clause your mother wrote it by hand. I'm only reading it." Alyssa shot to her feet, but Marcus held her back. "We have a right to know, at least our part." I gave a faint smile. "You have a right to know. You don't have a right to demand. The trust is public. The records are filed with the notary's office. And if you plan to sue, good luck, because I have recordings of every conversation, every threat you made about legal guardianship. They're enough to show a court you're not morally fit to represent anyone but yourselves." Marcus went quiet, his hand trembling a little. He looked down at the papers, then back at me, as if hunting for a loophole. But, for the first time in his life, I saw real fear in my son's eyes, not fear of losing money, but fear of losing control. I spoke slowly, almost in a whisper. "You've written your names into the record yourselves, not with ink, but with your actions. When you talked about guardianship, when you mentioned moving me into the basement, it was all recorded. I'm not harming you. You left proof on your own that you can't be trusted." No one said another word. Afternoon light slipped in through the window and fell across their faces, 2 young, handsome faces, full of ambition, now tinged with bitterness. Alyssa stood, her voice tight. "You're turning us into outsiders in our own family." I looked at her, calm. "No. You turned yourselves into outsiders when you chose assets over trust." Marcus took his wife's hand and turned away. Before he reached the door, his voice came heavy. "I never understood, Mom, and now I don't understand you either." I didn't answer. The door closed softly, but the sound lingered longer than I expected. I sat still, staring at the papers in front of me, proof of a love strong enough to outlast death. After a moment, I reached for my phone and dialed Talia. A clear voice answered, a little breathless. "Grandpa, are you okay?" I smiled. "I'm fine, sweetheart. I just finished a small meeting. I have something to tell you about your grandmother and about what you're about to inherit." Talia laughed shyly. "I don't have anything to inherit, Grandpa. I'm still behind on tuition this year. I was going to quit one of my part-time jobs to catch up." I held back a sigh. Just as I suspected, Marcus never used the money Loretta set aside for her. She opened a small account and asked me to transfer it to Talia each term, but for 2 years they told the girl her scholarship had been cut and made her fend for herself. I gripped the phone lightly, my voice slow and warm. "Talia, stop worrying about tuition. Your grandmother planned for it a long time ago. And now it's time I tell you the truth." Silence for a few seconds on the other end. I heard her choke up, then she said softly, "I always believed Grandma knew I didn't need much. I just needed to be trusted." I smiled as tears spilled down my cheeks before I could wipe them away. "And she trusted you more than anyone." I looked out the window. The light had turned golden. Wind moved through the jasmine in the yard, its scent like a gentle hug from Loretta. An illusion had just snapped, but what reconnected was stronger. Trust between 2 generations, something none of those wolves could ever buy. That evening, I called Talia again. Her voice was still light and clear, but there was something deeper in it, as if she'd grown older with every struggle. "Grandpa," she said, "I just finished my shift. I worked at the cafe till 8 o'clock tonight. It was packed. I barely got a break. I heard water being poured, pictured her in a small room under a dim yellow lamp. Talia," I asked quietly, "I want to ask you something. The monthly living money, $500 you get regularly, who do you think it's from?" She gave a small, honest laugh. "My parents, of course, Grandpa. I text to thank them, but they say they're busy. You know me, I don't like to bother them." I stayed quiet for a long moment. I heard the clock counting off the seconds, the wind at the window. Then I said, slow and clear, "It's not from your parents. It's from me." Silence. So long I thought the call had dropped. Then a long, shaking breath. "Are you serious?" "Yes," I said. "From the day you started college. Your grandmother set aside a fund for you and told me, let her study on trust, not on charity. I did exactly what she asked, $500 each month. From the small account she created for you." She drew in a deep breath. Then her voice broke like a string pulled too tight. "And for 2 years, I thought my parents were sacrificing for me. I felt indebted to them, guilty for making their lives harder. Grandpa," I even cried, thinking I was their burden. I didn't answer right away. I just listened as she sobbed once and tried to hold it back. "I'm not mad at you for keeping it secret," she went on. "I'm mad at being tricked in the name of goodness. Being grateful to the wrong person. It's humiliating, Grandpa." I closed my eyes. Her words went straight through me. "It's not your fault, Talia. When adults blur the line between helping and controlling, young people are left confused. You don't need to feel shame. Remember, you lived decently, even when you were misunderstood." Silence. Then Talia said quietly, "I want to go home. I want to face them. I can't pretend to say thank you anymore." I exhaled slowly. "If you go, be ready they won't apologize. Adults rarely do when their power is shaken." "Then I'll just tell the truth," Talia said. "Like you." The next morning, I got an unexpected call from my daughter Nadine. Her voice was tired, hoarse, like someone who had cried all night. "Dad," she said, "I just found out about Talia. I'm sorry." I kept quiet, letting her speak. "I didn't think it would come to this. I let Marcus and Alyssa decide because I thought it was practical, but it was just my way of ducking out. I know I was wrong letting Talia feel grateful to the wrong people. I just didn't have the courage to confront them." I heard truth in Nadine's voice, rarer than an apology. "Nadine," I said slowly, "sorry is a beginning, not an end. You see the problem. What you do next decides whether you've really changed. I understand, she whispered. I just don't want Talia to lose faith in the adults. I leaned back and looked out at the jasmine in full bloom. If you truly want to make it right, let her be free. Don't try to guide or fix her. Helping doesn't mean controlling, and love doesn't mean polishing your image. On the other end, Nadine cried. I'm afraid. She won't see me as her mother anymore. Don't be afraid, I said. She's learning to separate, to grow up. If you let her go without tying her down with guilt, one day she'll come back out of self-respect, not pity. That afternoon, Talia arrived. She stood at the door, hair pulled back, eyes still puffy but strangely bright. Grandpa, she said, I'm back. I talked to them. They were angry, evasive, but at least they listened. I nodded. Good. Sometimes telling the truth is enough to start change. She sat across from me, hands clasped. Grandpa, I don't want to live with them for a while. I want to stay here, or go with you, if you're going somewhere. I hesitated. Go with me? Yes. Mom said, you have something abroad. I don't need to know what. I want to go. I want to do real work and live where promises still mean something. I looked at my granddaughter, young face, but eyes steady from surviving loss. In that moment I saw she was what Loretta had left behind. Honest, steadfast, unwilling to compromise with lies. I said softly, I'm planning to go, to Portugal, to the villa your grandmother had someone watch over. Its peaceful lemon trees and the sea. But before I go, I need to tie off every loose end here. Every line has to be closed. Talia nodded, serious. I can help. I'm not afraid of trouble. I smiled. I know. That night I called Ethan Cole to say I wanted to finalize the last steps. He said, everything's set. I sent warning letters to any agents Marcus contacted. The county recorder has added a notation to the land file. No one can touch the house without your signature. Good, I said. I also registered a separate P.O. box at the post office. All official mail goes there, through no one else. Are you planning to leave the country? Ethan asked. Yes, a necessary trip. But don't worry, I'll stay in touch. Mr. Brooks, Ethan said after a brief pause. I've met many people who come here afraid, looking to run. You're not like them. You're going to preserve what others are trying to erase. I let out a small laugh. Maybe it's both. But thank you, Ethan. You helped an old man remember who he used to be. After I hung up, I opened my computer and checked the cloud folders, every recording, receipt, and confirmation stored in 3 separate places. I wiped personal traces from the old laptop, cleared any banking data, and texted Nadine a few lines. I'll be away for a while. Don't look for me. When you're calm enough, teach your daughter how to live honestly. I sent it, turned off my phone, and set it beside Loretta's photo. That night, Talia and I sat on the porch, crickets singing and the smell of damp earth after rain. She leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, Grandpa, do you think Grandma knew I'd go with you someday? I smoothed her hair. Your grandmother knew everything. She left the keys to me, but maybe she really prepared them for you. She smiled, eyes far away. I don't need much. I just want to live right. I nodded. Then tomorrow, we'll start over somewhere the sea is bluer and people's hearts are clearer. At dawn the next day, I opened the laptop and booked a one-way ticket to Faro, the closest point to the Algarve. Passenger names: Calvin Brooks, Talia Brooks. I watched the confirmation appear on the screen, then said quietly to myself, Loretta, you see this? We've taught at least one person how to love without owning. A cool morning breeze drifted across the porch, carrying the familiar scent of jasmine. And I knew the next journey wasn't just leaving a place, it was saying goodbye to the last illusions to begin living honestly for myself and for the one who's gone. On the morning of departure, Sunlight slipped through the curtains and laid a pale gold across the wood floor. I sat by the bed and looked at the packed suitcase. One suit, a few old shirts, a notebook, and Loretta's photo frame. A life once crowded with duty and photo frames. Memories, now reduced to a bit more than 20 kilograms of luggage. I smiled to myself. Loretta would call that just enough to live. When I rolled the suitcase onto the porch, Talia was already at the door, a small backpack on her shoulders. She wore a denim jacket, her eyes bright with resolve. "Grandpa," she said, "I'm going with you if you'll have me." I didn't answer right away. I looked at her for a long moment. In the early light, her face looked uncannily like Loretta's, not in features, but in the gaze. Steady, warm, unafraid. I nodded. "If your grandmother were here, she'd be so happy." Talia smiled, young and grieving at once. "Then let's go, Grandpa. Before I change my mind." A 10.5-hour flight from Atlanta to Lisbon, then a connection to Faro. As the plane crossed the Atlantic, I looked out at sunlight blazing over the clouds. Talia slept on my shoulder. I pulled the blanket up over her and remembered a moment years ago. Loretta, resting her head on my shoulder just like that, on our first train trip together from Georgia to New York when we were young. This was different. This trip wasn't running. It was a beginning, like Loretta wrote in her letter. "If you must go, go toward the sun." We landed in the Algarve in the early afternoon. As we stepped out of the airport, a slim, dark-haired woman held a hand-lettered sign. "Brooks Family." I knew at once Inez Rocha. She smiled and hurried over. "Mr. Brooks," she called, then surprised me with a long, tight hug, like family. The warmth of it made me feel Loretta was still here, somewhere in the sea breeze. "Welcome to the Algarve, you and Miss Talia," Inez said, her English soft with a Portuguese lilt. "Mrs. Loretta told me that when you arrive, I should hug you long on her behalf." I laughed, tears stinging. She always knew how to make people cry and laugh at the same time. Inez drove us along a winding, coastal road, past vineyards, old olive groves, and whitewashed houses. Down a narrow lane, I saw the villa, the one Loretta described in her letter. It sat on a gentle hill, white walls, green shutters, red tile roof, just as Inez had said. Lemon trees heavy with bright fruit lined the porch, their scent soft in the wind. Far off, waves broke against the rocks, a sound as even as breathing. Talia stood still, staring. "Grandpa, I thought places like this only existed in movies." "No," I said. "It's just rare that people manage to keep them." Inez opened the door. The smell of pine and rosemary drifted out. "I dust every week, change the linens, open the windows to let the air through. Each time I do, I think today might be the day you arrive." She showed us around, a wide living room, stone fireplace, a bookcase, still holding a few titles Loretta left. In the main bedroom, an envelope lay on the wooden desk, clearly labeled in her familiar hand. "For Talia." Talia hesitated, looked at me. I nodded for her to open it. Inside was a handwritten letter on paper turned slightly yellow. She unfolded it and read, her voice trembling. "My dear Talia, by the time you read this, your grandpa has likely come with you. He once believed life offered only two choices, safety or freedom. But in truth, only those who choose what's true have both. Don't take the easy road because it's paved, take the real road because it bears your footprints. Keep this house not only with paperwork but with how you live. Ask, what can I do to help? Not what do I get? Grandma loves you, Loretta." Talia folded the letter, tears running down. I stood beside her in silence. The room seemed to brighten with the late afternoon sun. I understood why Loretta chose her, not because she was obedient, but because she listened to the truth. Inez came close and set a hand on Talia's shoulder. "She believed in you. I do too. Mrs. Loretta, Didn't just leave a house, she left a lesson for all of us. I asked softly. Inez, did Loretta help your family when you were in trouble? She nodded, eyes shining. Yes. She paid my son's college tuition for 3 years. When I asked why, she said, because someone once helped me like this, and now it's my turn. I never imagined she'd go this far. We fell quiet for a long time. I looked around the house where Loretta had set her touch in every detail, from a jar of dried rosemary on the shelf to a small painting of the beach in the living room. I realized this wasn't a place to hide. It was the final point in a plan drawn in love and trust. In the evening, Talia helped Inez cook. While they talked in English laced with Portuguese, I sat on the porch and watched the sun sink into the sea. The wind carried salt and lemon, and I missed Loretta more than ever. Talia came out with a small notebook. Grandpa, I've decided. I'm learning Portuguese. I want to understand the neighbors, hear their stories about Grandma, know the village market, the history. I want this place to be part of my life, not just a legacy. I felt lighter. That's what your grandmother wanted most, for you to live among people, not apart from them. She smiled. And you? What will you do here? I looked out. Maybe plant more lavender, write a few pages in the old notebook. Mostly, I'll learn how to be quiet without feeling alone. Our first night in the Algarve, we sat on the porch. The sea lay black before us, moonlight streaking it like silver. Talia rested her head on my shoulder, Loretta's letter in her hand. Grandpa, she said, I don't think Grandma went far. She just moved to a home with more light. I smiled and looked up at the star-studded sky. Yes. And tonight she's probably looking down, seeing the two of us finally living for ourselves. We stayed there a long time without speaking. The waves rolled steady. Wind moved through the lemon leaves. Rosemary scented the air. A rare, full peace one I'd lost since the day Loretta died. For the first time in years, I didn't feel at the end of the road, but at the center of a new beginning where the past could rest and the future opened quietly, in a sea as gentle as a promise. 2 months passed faster than I expected. Mornings in the Algarve began with church bells from far away, the smell of toast from a little shop at the bottom of the hill, and Talia's Portuguese vocabulary under the porch, steady and patient. Bom dia. Tudo bem. Obrigada, she repeated, trying to get the cadence right. I watched from a distance, saw her smile when a neighbor nodded approval. The shy girl could now talk to strangers in a brand new language. 2 months, and Talia had changed as if she'd lived here a year. She hit the village market in the morning, taught neighborhood kids English at noon, and joined a church conversation, circle with Inez at night. Her days were full, and every part of them mattered. One afternoon I saw her sitting with a bunch of kids, holding a small white board, writing, Hello, hola, thank you, obrigada, friend, amigo. The children giggled when they mispronounced a word, and Talia laughed with them, correcting gently. In return, they taught her everyday phrases the language classes never cover: saudade, a sweet kind of longing; dispensa, pantry; abrigo, a shelter. I heard them tease, Talia fala português como o sol. Talia speaks Portuguese like the sun, meaning her voice felt warm. In the evenings, Talia often sat with me on the porch and talked about her new friends. She said, Grandpa, I've never seen a place where people talk about kindness so much. But kindness here isn't doing it for you, it's doing it with you. Everyone respects the part you do for yourself. I smiled. That's what your grandmother hoped you'd understand long ago, that helping doesn't mean taking away someone's independence. One rainy morning, Inez dropped by with a stack of old papers in her hand. I found this in the archives. It's an immigration file from 1981, from when my mother worked at City Hall. I think little Talia might like it. Talia opened it and read, absorbed. It was full of documents about Portuguese immigrants to America, people stuck because of paperwork, denied residency over a single letter wrong in a file. One name looked familiar, Rocha family, the same last name as Inez. That afternoon I saw Talia glued to the reading table, scribbling dense notes. When I asked, she looked up, eyes blazing. "Grandpa, I think I've found what I want to do." "What is it, sweetheart?" "Immigration law. Not the kind where you fight in court, but where you help people understand the law so they don't get swallowed by what they don't know." I read Miss Inez's file, and there are hundreds of people like them, just missing someone to speak for them. I looked at her, filled with a quiet pride. "You're right. Systems only change when someone dares to fix them from the inside." Talia nodded. "I want to study it. I just don't know where to start." Inez smiled and set a hand on her shoulder. "I know where. The law school at the University of Lisbon is opening entrance exams for their international program. I know a few professors there. I can help you apply." Talia froze. "I can?" "Of course. Miss Suze. Loretta helped me. Now it's my turn to help her granddaughter." That line made me turn away for fear my tears would spill. Even after leaving this world, Loretta was still clearing the road for others. In the days that followed, the house filled with talk. In the mornings I told Talia about America in the 1970s, how a black man like me, wanting to buy a house in a white neighborhood, had to get someone else to put it in their name. I told her about a mortgage application returned just because it didn't match the appropriate residential zone. Talia went quiet. "You lived inside that system, and you don't hate it?" I shook my head. "No, because hate makes you like them. I chose to fix it by working, paying taxes, and teaching my children to feel ashamed if they lived off privilege." She nodded. "Now I see why Grandma chose me. She wanted me to learn to fix things at the root, not just complain from the sidelines. We talked more about things that seem simple but sit at the core of family disasters, the line between helping and enabling, love and control. I said, helping is offering a hand so someone can stand. Enabling is keeping them lying down so you can feel taller. Love is seeing someone be free. Control is shrinking them to fit your fear." Talia sat still, eyes far away. Maybe my parents never understood that difference. "They will," I said, "when you stop living by their mold." One weekend night, Talia said, "Grandpa, I need to video call my parents. This time I have to say everything." I nodded. "Say it. But don't speak to win, speak to set yourself free." The screen lit up. Marcus's face appeared, with Alyssa and Nadine. The air was heavy. "That you?" Marcus asked warily. "Where are you?" "In the Algarve, with Grandpa," Talia said plainly. "And I have news. I've applied to the international law program in Lisbon. I'm staying in Portugal." Alyssa raised an eyebrow. "How? Who's paying?" "We're not," Talia cut her off. "You don't need to. I'm not asking for money. I have enough. Grandma prepared for me. I just want you to know I'm choosing this path because I believe in it, not to defy anyone." Marcus drew a sharp breath, forcing calm. "So you're abandoning family? After everything we built, you say you have enough?" Talia looked straight at the screen, voice calm but firm. "Dad, family isn't a place to keep people indebted forever. I'm not abandoning family. I'm stopping living inside its illusions. I want to build something that matters, not an image." "On the other end," Alyssa flared, "what has he filled your head with? He's using—" "That's enough," Nadine cut in. Quiet until then, she finally spoke, soft but resolute. "Alyssa, stop. She's right. We should let her decide." Silence. Marcus lowered his head, said nothing more. The call ended. The screen went dark. Talia set the phone down and took a long breath. "I thought I'd feel sad. I don't. I feel light." I set my hand on her shoulder and smiled gently. "Because you just chose freedom over obligation. It's the only way to love for real." That night I sat alone and wrote a few lines in my notebook. Loretta, you raised not just a child but a purpose. That girl will go further than we did, carrying what you planted. Self-respect and the belief that truth doesn't need permission to exist. Sea wind moved through the window, lemon scent mixing with rosemary. I smiled, took a sip of cold tea, and listened to Talia in the next room practicing Portuguese. Her voice rang out clear, bright, full of life. Liberdade, freedom. And I knew Loretta was right. Not everyone is born with a voice, but if they're loved the right way, they'll find their own in the end. One early autumn afternoon, as the olive trees outside the villa turned silvery, I got a call from Nadine. Her voice was lower and slower than before, no sharp edges, no defense. "Dad," she said, "I'm not calling to ask for forgiveness. I want to earn back trust bit by bit, by what I do, not by tears." I stayed quiet and let her go on. "I've been in therapy for 3 months, Nadine said. "The doctor told me to trace back when I started seeing you as the family pension fund. I thought, then realized it was when I started believing love had to be measured in money. Alyssa planted that idea, but the fault is mine for letting it take root." I leaned back, eyes on the lemon grove glowing yellow. "I'm glad you can say it out loud. We only change when we name the wound." Nadine gave a small laugh, mixed with a sigh. "I don't want to apologize just to hear you say it's okay. I know it isn't that simple. But I'm trying to return what I took without deserving." "What will you do?" I asked. "I asked for more shifts in the hospital's admin office," she said. "I'm studying accounting at night to move into healthcare HR. I want to pay my own tuition. And starting next month, I'll put money back into Grandma's fund to support poor med students instead of sending it to my daughter." I stayed silent and let the tears come. Not from sentiment, but from recognizing something deeper. True repentance never needs an audience. Nadine went on. "I wrote Talia a handwritten letter telling her everything. I didn't make excuses. I just said I regret making her grateful to the wrong people." "Has she gotten it?" I asked. "Yes." She sent me a short reply. "I forgive, but I won't forget. You taught me a lesson no book has. I think that's the best we can hope for between us." I nodded, smiling through the tears. Sometimes forgiveness isn't for mending, it's so each person can go on without carrying each other's weight. A month later, Nadine said she'd visit Portugal. I asked, "You want to stay at the villa?" She shook her head over the phone. "No, Dad, I booked a small hotel near the village. I don't want to intrude on your space with Talia. I want to come as a guest, not as someone claiming a right to stay." When I heard that, I knew Nadine had truly changed. The afternoon she arrived, the Algarve sky was impossibly blue. The wind carried sea salt and ripe lemon. I stood at the villa gate and watched her pull a suitcase from the taxi thinner frame, gentler eyes. We hugged not tightly but enough to know blood still ties us, and there's room for a new beginning. That evening, Talia came too. She'd been in classes all day in Lisbon but insisted on taking the train back to see her mother. At first the air was awkward. Then Inez, like a kind fairy, stopped by with pastel de nata and wine, breaking the silence with a joke. "These are only sweet when shared, no dessert for the quiet." We all laughed. The first shared laughter in 3 generations in years. At dinner, Nadine set down her glass, voice even. "Dad, I want a rule. Every time I visit, we talk on the porch, not inside the house. So when I pass the gate, I remember, I'm being allowed in. I don't have a built-in right." I looked at my daughter, full of a feeling I couldn't name. "You don't have to be that strict." "I do," Nadine said. "Because before, I didn't understand boundaries. I thought love meant the right to cross. Now I want to learn to stand outside, knock, and wait." I nodded. "Then we'll call it the gate rule." We smiled, and right at that dinner table we set new rules, light but clear. 1. Respect other people's decisions. Don't try to fix them. 2. No money talk. We've had enough numbers in our past. 3. No emotional manipulation. No tears, no guilt. We've kept those 3 ever since. Strangely, clear limits brought us closer. As for Marcus and Alyssa, there was nothing I needed to do. Once the family funding dried up, the layers of gloss they'd built fell apart like sea foam. Alyssa moved out with a bit of separate property, and Marcus sold his small company to pay debts. I heard it from Nadine and simply nodded. No gloating, no pity. It wasn't a tragedy, it was a consequence. People only collapse when they build their lives on greed and forget money is loyal to no one. Meanwhile, Talia was blooming like lavender in season. She'd just gotten into the international pre-law track in Lisbon. The day the results came, she ran back to the villa with the paper trembling in her hands, eyes shining like a child's. "Grandpa, I did it!" I hugged her, laughing wordlessly. Somewhere above, I knew Loretta was watching, wearing the smile only those who have finished a long journey can wear. The fund Loretta left remained intact enough for Talia to finish the program and begin her career. But the girl didn't spend carelessly. She logged each dollar, sent me a monthly report, with a note. "Grandma taught me money is a tool, not a goal." Each night I saw her studying on the porch. Warm light fell across her young face, with a plate of cheese, a glass of light wine, and a thick law book in 2 languages. She read, underlined, then annotated in red, meticulous and steady, just like Loretta used to be. One evening she looked up and asked, "Grandpa, why didn't Grandma write a memoir? Her story deserves to be told." I smiled. She believed people don't need to leave a story, just an impact. And maybe she already has, in you. One night, as sea wind carried salt and rosemary through the house, I took the old leather notebook and wrote one last line for the day. Boundaries aren't walls, they're gates that teach people how to enter. I closed the book and looked up at the porch light. Talia still sat there, headphones on, lips moving as she read Portuguese law aloud. Her eyes shone not from the lamp, but from conviction. I smiled, slowly poured a little more wine, took a small sip, and tasted the warmth of seasons gone by. Across the sky, the moon rose full. I knew the walls in my life had been taken down, brick by brick, not to erase the past, but to build new gates, one for Nadine, one for Talia, and one for myself, the man who finally learned to open his heart without losing his boundaries. And perhaps, somewhere in the salty breeze, Loretta was whispering, "See? In the end, we never needed to hold them in place. We just had to open the gate at the right time." A year passed. Our second summer in the Algarve returned with cicadas and the sweet scent of lemons. Talia is now officially a first-year student in the Immigration Law Department at the University of Lisbon. Every morning she's up at 5 a.m., catching the early train with her old backpack and a notebook packed with Portuguese and English phrases. In the evenings she comes home, tired but bright-eyed, telling me small stories about African immigrants arriving in the Algarve, people working endlessly on farms, lacking legal documents, shut out of the healthcare system, needing someone to speak for them. Talia told me, voice steady, "Grandpa, I want to start a support project for this community, not charity, real legal support. Help them with paperwork, residency registration, understanding their rights." I looked at her, and residents, saw Loretta continuing kindness with principles, neither needy nor cheap. "You don't have to save the whole world," I said. "Just do your part. The world will turn the rest." Talia smiled. "I know, Grandpa, but I think Grandma would like to see me try." In October, Nadine came back a second time. No heavy suitcase, no guilty tone. She walked through the villa gate with a calm smile, carrying a jar of homemade blueberry jam. "Dad," she said, "this time I'm here to talk, not to make amends." We sat on the porch. Late-day light drifted across the lemon branches, soft and gold like a long-lost peace. Talia was there too. But instead of distance, there was now an easy quiet between mother and daughter, the quiet of two people relearning how to trust. Nadine said that after therapy she started taking overnight shifts in the inpatient ward. Night shifts are understaffed, but they're more honest, she said. People don't pretend when they hurt. I looked at my daughter and saw a woman growing up all over again, not chasing status now, but living truthfully. That afternoon I sent Nadine a photo of the lemon grove heavy with fruit. An hour later she sent me a shot from the hospital neon lights, her hand holding an old patient's as he slept, her face tired but at peace. Under the photo, Nadine wrote, "2 different lives, but both real." Reading it, I felt clean, as if something had been washed away. That night I wrote in my notebook, and Loretta's words came back clear. Real wealth isn't in the bank, it's in dignity, in boundaries, and in a kind of love that doesn't control. I copied the line exactly, then said quietly to myself, "You were right, Loretta. You didn't just save me from my family's greed, you freed Talia's future, and Nadine's too." I saw more clearly than ever. Love doesn't prove itself through sacrifice, but through limits. Boundaries don't divide, they protect. Like the gate I set with Nadine back then. One morning I sat in Loretta's old study and wrote the last letter to Marcus. "Son, we haven't spoken for a while, and I don't think we need to say much. I'm not angry, and I'm not waiting for an apology. When you're ready to love without needing to own, when you understand others don't exist to prove your worth, then the gate to this home will always be open. Until that day, live decently. Dad, Calvin." I folded the letter, sealed the envelope, and placed it in the bottom drawer where Loretta kept the letters she'd never send. In the days after, life slipped back to its usual rhythm. Mornings brought church bells far off mixing with the sea. Talia studied in Lisbon and came home on weekends. Nadine video called every Sunday to talk about the hospital, ask about the lemon grove, about Inez, and the new white wine I'd found. The White House, green shutters, red tile roof stood still in wind and salt as if it breathed, along with us. Each time I listened to the sea murmur, I thought of Loretta. Maybe she never left. Maybe she became the waves coming and going, patient as a reminder. Everything can change if we dare. One evening I stepped onto the porch, saw warm light spilling from Talia's room, and heard her reading immigration law in both Portuguese and English. I settled into the familiar wooden chair, poured a little wine, and watched the lemon grove shimmer under the moon. Everything Loretta left wasn't house, money, or papers. It was a foundation of spirit, teaching me not to collapse under loss, teaching Talia not to bow to prejudice, and teaching Nadine to stand straight without a borrowed crutch. That night I slept soundly for the first time in years, no dreams, no gnawing. I knew I had finally walked the path Loretta drew, from being stripped to being free, from wounded to forgiving. And as I closed my eyes, I heard her voice in the wind. Don't mistake generosity for surrender. Set boundaries, that's how you love rightly for yourself and for others. I smiled and whispered back into the dark. I remember, Loretta, and I'll keep my word. Where are you watching this story from, dear companion on the road? If these lines touched a memory, a boundary you once had to set to keep your self-respect, or a gate you had to raise with someone you love, please share it in the comments. Your honest words might be a small light that helps someone lost find courage and peace again. Thank you for staying to the end of this journey, for listening to an old man speak about pain, forgiveness, and how love can still live when we learn to say, enough. If this story touched even a corner of your heart, please like, subscribe, and come back for the next stories where we'll keep finding the worth of kindness, of boundaries, and of love that knows when to stop. Because sometimes a single story told from the heart is enough to warm another heart.